Hello and welcome one and all to the XP Billionaires podcast. I'm Rafe Thagrim. With me, I have Sky Knight and Irene Rogue. Sky, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm fine. You're keeping me on my toes.
I'd like to think I am. All right, and Irene, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Perhaps slightly less on my toes than Sky is right now, but that's fine.
I mean, regardless, you're both awake, you're both ready to chat. We're going to talk video games. What could possibly go wrong?
Everything.
I feel like a
Everything.
lot, but I like your optimism.
Optimism is good. We got to have that for a good, solid podcast. All right, well, let's get right into this week's topic. So, RPG gaming was originally a primarily single player experience, but that changed with the release of World of Warcraft when the age of MMORPGs began. With games like WoW and Final Fantasy XIV dominating the subscription based MMO market, games like RuneScape and MapleStory, led the way with their free to play systems. But there's so many different MMOs out there. You couldn't possibly list them all. But one thing is for certain, they do tend to be a bit of a commitment. So this week, we've all played some MMOs in our lifetimes, so we're going to discuss what makes such a commitment worthwhile. Now, because of that, we're going to do something a little different with our discussion format this week. So instead of doing a full roundtable discussion, asking everyone the same questions, I've got some directed questions for each of us that I thought would be a little bit more fun because we each have our own different experiences related to what MMOs we've played. That way, it gives us a chance to have a bit of a discussion on each response afterwards. So I don't know, thought we just kind of try to spice it up just a little bit. And what better way to do that than with starting with Irene on a directed question?
Oh God, putting me on the spot right away, are you? Okay.
Dun dun dun.
So, as I recall, you are a current subscriber to Final Fantasy XIV, correct?
That is true, yep.
Perfect. So, I'm most curious, do you find yourself obligated to play it more because you're putting that subscription fee into it?
Not necessarily, no, because so the way I've actually set up my payment model is that I actually only pay every 6 months or so because I subscribe for 180 days at a time. And because I do the subscription so far in advance, I end up paying less than if I pay month to month overall. And I realize this is I can drop that much money on an MMO every 6 months, and I get it. That's not something everyone can do. But because I do it like that, I don't feel like I'm necessarily paying every month. So it's something I can pick up or put down at my leisure. And I don't feel necessarily compelled to play it all the time. I can take a break for a little bit and come back to it later. In a way, it's well, there's some flexibility here because I've already, paid up front. I don't necessarily feel like I need to necessarily get my money's worth because, at the end of the day, it's more of an activity I do with a friend rather than something I do on my own.
Okay, no, that's an interesting way to put it. I'm definitely of a different mindset for that. When I was playing it, for me, I really felt that time equals money. Even I was doing it on the 3 month basis. I think was my subscription setup, and for that, for me, I still felt obligated to at least log in and get at least an hour of play in every time I was home or I was available to do that. And that was kind of a thing for me because I put a lot of other single player experiences or non-online experiences aside. So I ended up creating even more of a backlog than I already had because of it.
Yeah, and I totally get that perspective as well. I just think because it's something that I have said I'm going to do with my friends when they're not available, I'll do my single player stuff. There's an extra sort of parameter that enables me to sort of step away from it and not necessarily make my backlog enormous by still having the subscription. And I will admit that that is on some levels just pissing money away. I totally admit that. But it's entertainment. I should be allowed to throw whatever money I think is worth at the experience,
Oh, absolutely. And like this isn't even a judgment piece there. Like I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong or what I'm doing is wrong or anything like that.
Yeah.
I like seeing these different perspectives on this particular topic.
And for some people, like, it won't be worth it, and I totally understand that. But for me, because like I have a friend that I play with, and we go on Discord and we just like shoot the shit while we run dungeons, and we get like really deep invested into the plot, and like it's an experience for us to play together. And because I have that, it's like, well, this is worth maintaining for me because it's also, a time I get to spend with a friend. It's time I get to spend doing something we both enjoy together. So there's like an extra element for me. It's not just, getting the most out of the game, but there's an extra value element for me there, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to that particular element, like while it's not traditionally an MMO, I mean, Sky and I are basically doing the same thing with Dauntless right now. And even though we end up with two randos every time we go hunting, we're still hunting together, and that's part of why we're still at it after all these months.
Yeah, same with us actually. Like we're still like going at it together, slowly chipping away at the difficulty because it's something we can do together. And trust me, like holy shit, we definitely feel when one of us is like not fulfilling the role that we normally do. So like she tanks, I heal, and one of us is like, okay, I'm gonna DPS and you do your role, or like we're gonna swap, or one of us is gonna do a different role, and we have to let somebody else tank or heal. Like we feel it. Holy shit! Like we've come to depend on each other. She knows that if she's going into a tough situation, she wants me to be playing the healer because she knows she can trust me. And I know that like if we're going into a dungeon that requires some serious attention, that like she'll pay it. There's that element to it as well. It's like there's like this bond of like, yep, we can totally trust each other with difficult roles and make sure that like no one gets mad and like just have fun, but at the same time also make sure that like we're not just dealing with randos who are playing a more difficult role and don't know what they're doing.
And unfortunately, that happens a lot, even in games like Dauntless. Yeah, I think Sky can attest to that. We've dealt with quite a few pairs of interesting characters, we should say, who totally know how to use their weapons.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to. I'll be playing a tank, and if she's not my healer, then it's like, okay, this healer is letting me get really, really low. Like really low. I'm uncomfortable with how low my hit points are dipping. And I really wish they wouldn't make me stress out quite that much. But here we
Yeah,
are.
I feel like understanding the definition of the word healer would really help in that situation.
Yeah, like when I heal, it's like my primary function is to heal. Therefore, I'm only throwing attacks when my tank is in stable or excellent condition. And I don't necessarily let them like whittle down to almost nothing to where I'm like popping my rescue heals in order to help them, cuz like I want to save those for an actual emergency, not a situation I've created by being negligent.
Well, exactly. Basic teamwork skills make a world of difference. And you don't even need to be talking to each other. Like half the time we have people muted on Dauntless, but we need to, you need to learn your role and do it and not make silly mistakes that are going to drive the other players up the wall and possibly cost you a fight.
And like I don't necessarily mind if people are allowed to screw up. They are. And most of the time, I find when people like they mess up or they trip over something, they're like, "Oh shit, I didn't mean to do that." It's like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Just like
No, it happens to everybody.
exactly, like it happens to everyone. Don't worry about it. Like, thanks for just being like, cool about it and not necessarily like throwing it at everybody else. Essentially, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's my, I guess my biggest complaint is there are people who was like, well, if you hadn't done this, like, yes, but like that's your job. Anyway, now we're getting into complaining about player session. But like, yeah, that's sort of why, like, for me, the cost is sort of it's worth the price because like I also get this thing that I can do with a friend of mine that I don't get to see very often.
No, and that's one of the great things that MMOs have really done. Like while you get to connect with your friends all the way through it, but there have been so many stories of people who have gotten into like marriages and relationships through MMO gaming together, starting with only seeing an avatar's face before really kind of seeing a real person. So it is something that I think has been a really interesting aspect of MMO gaming.
And like real talk, like this friend I met at one of the darkest moments of my life so far is when I was let go from my first grown up I'm paying rent with this job, and I was terrified. And I met her playing Overwatch of all things. And it was fun to like find a different game that we could go and do together, like find more games that we could play together. It's like I made this friend playing one game, and I can like brought the friendship into other games as well. So now it's like, okay, yeah, let's play this other game together. And maybe eventually we'll move on from Final Fantasy, but like there's a lot of content to get through.
Oh yeah, and it just keeps going too. It's really impressive that they're able to just keep going after all this time. I mean, even World of Warcraft, which I've never touched once, like the amount of content that's out for that game, and now you've got the vanilla server that just recently came out, so you don't even have to play with all that new stuff. You can just go and play WoW Classic if you wanted to.
Exactly. So like they keep coming out with new classes to play, new story, and new quests, new side quests, new just the game is so full of stuff to do. Like I never really feel like I'm not getting value from my money from a perspective of like here's what's being offered. Like here's what's being offered. I have more stuff than I could ever hope to accomplish. I can't possibly do everything in this game. But that's all right because it also gives you leeway to sort of like play the game the way you want it. Like
Yeah.
we both love running dungeons. We're not a huge fan of like other particular aspects of it, but like the dungeons are fun.
And yeah, like there's always something that's really, really fun about an MMO. And like, yeah, I mean, when I played it, I did not particularly enjoy raid bosses. Just too many people, too many hands in the pot, which I thought was a little bit much. But I mean, that's just me, right? If other people absolutely love raids, and by all means, have at them.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. It feels like the game is well balanced if you want to be a casual player or if you want to be a hardcore player.
Yeah.
And because of that nice balance they've managed to strike, it means that a lot of different people can enjoy this game.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. All right, well, let's shift gears a little bit. Sky, it is your turn. I know that you've dabbled in free to play MMOs every now and again. I know you spent a lot of your life, or your younger years, playing RuneScape once upon a time. And I know we both had a brief stint playing Neverwinter on the PS4. What was it about those games that got you so hooked originally?
Well, the one thing about free to play MMOs is that you can, in a big way, choose to pay when you want to pay. If you're not playing much, don't spend any money. Play a little bit with the free stuff, right? If you're playing a lot, well, then you can purchase something in their store to augment your experience. There's more choice, and I like that because I am not really the type to play the same game consistently over time, like a long period of time. Like I will play an RPG from start to finish and then I will move on. Usually for me, the sweet spot's around 80 hours before I'm like, okay, I want something new. The thing is, I don't want to waste my money on a subscription to a game I may not find time to play.
And that's
Now,
completely fair. Like that makes total sense. I mean, that's one thing that I also feel very strongly about too. Like I was saying, for me, time equals money, and like that's just my way of seeing it when it comes to a purchasable product. If I get 80 hours out of a like a standalone RPG and I've paid $80 for it, I feel like I've gotten my money's worth. $1 per hour, awesome, great. And when with the free games, yeah, you just pay when you feel like it's beneficial for you in whatever way you feel is appropriate.
yeah. One of my big problems with MMOs is that they're transitory experiences in terms of they only exist for a certain period of time. They're dependent on servers. And when a game closes down, you're done.
Yes, it's less of a risk with like a big game like the World of Warcrafts or the Final Fantasy 14s, but I do remember there being a time where there was an MMO explosion and a lot of those MMOs just didn't make it. And that's the thing, like an MMO needs a truly titanically massive player base to be sustainable.
And in fact, the vast majority will not succeed.
Exactly. And we're actually seeing that now with the new like live services fucking game model that is just every company wants to have a live service these days, but it's like, okay, these are just MMOs with a new label, and they're going to have the same problem in that not everybody is going to find time to play these. They're going to pick their game, and they're going to stick with it. And it's just going to leave a lot of games just out in the cold. And actually, we're seeing that right now slowly as Anthem by BioWare, one of my favorite studios, dies a truly miserable and slow death.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's with every company now like vying for space in this market, you're gonna find a lot of games are like built around online experiences that won't necessarily be there in a few years' time. Because again, the market space for a paid MMO, especially a paid MMO, is super, super small and already super, super crowded.
And the thing is, too, like, those two games had a natural advantage. They're not brand new IPs.
Yeah, they had a history of IP to draw on, so Warcraft already had lore to draw on. Final Fantasy definitely had its intellectual property name to draw on. I mean, for the Final Fantasy series, 14's not its only MMO. Like 11
Yeah.
was their first kick at the can, and it was successful enough that they decided to go for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So like these studios that are making them, they're not like small plucky studios that are like, yeah, we're going to stand up this live service and make tons of money. No, they're a significant investment from established market players. Your Blizzards and your Squares, like, don't kid yourself. Those companies had plenty of money before they even decided to start developing these games because the upfront investment is enormous. I think at the end of the day, that's what a lot of these live service games seem to miss, is that vanilla WoW and Final Fantasy XIV, at least the Realm Reborn version, they were good at launch. You didn't have to wait for them to get good.
Yeah, exactly. You need a strong launch to draw interest in the game to start with.
Yeah, otherwise there's just huge money sinks.
Exactly.
So, and I'm not entirely sure what kind of titanic player base both WoW and Final Fantasy XIV need to actually stay afloat, but it's big actually. I think as of a couple of years ago, they were about neck and neck in terms of how many players they had, which is like that in and of itself is mind-boggling when you think of how many people play WoW.
Yes, it's been around a very long time.
Yeah, and Final Fantasy has just managed to claw up like to be relatively like within the same ballpark of number of concurrent subscribers. Like it took a while for them to get up there. Like it took at least so in order to be like WoW successful, it took them like 2 expansion packs.
There's also the fact that Final Fantasy 14 opened up on consoles, and that's another that just opened up a whole new market, which allowed them to get closer. I don't think it would have been possible for them to get that close without doing so.
Yeah, I completely agree. The fact that they have made an experience that can be played by players playing on console or PC, like PS3, PS4, and PC, we all play on the same servers. It's cross-platform in that regard. So by doing that, they managed to grab the untapped console MMO market at the time and really draw in all those players. But to think about it, in order to draw in all those players, they had to tap into this market that wasn't necessarily being served because they didn't have access to, you know, a PC to play WoW. But they also, like, base game, Heavensward, and I think Stormblood before they were, like, competitive within how many concurrent subscribers they had with WoW. That's significant investment to get there.
Well, and to buttress your point a little bit, you got to remember that it's a Final Fantasy game. Their entire existing audience is on console pretty much.
Yeah. Like, they didn't exactly have a huge audience on PC. There was actually a bit of a genius move to start with. The Final Fantasy XI was, like, exclusively for consoles. There was actually a hookup that you had for your PS2 that connected it to the internet. And it was, like, super revolutionary at the time.
Yeah, I remember that actually. You also needed it because the EverQuest tried to go onto PS2 as well.
It wasn't as successful.
No, it wasn't.
And honestly, like, Final Fantasy XI, I didn't know a lot of people who played it until it had, like, a PC port in the West, at least. I'm sure it was extremely successful in Japan, but I know a lot of people skipped Final Fantasy XI in the West because of the add-on for the PS2 is really expensive. It was like $100 just for that, like, piece of equipment you needed to hook up to the internet.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess my point is, like, yeah, the companies who do make these things, they have to be willing to put in significant dollars in order to make them work. Lots of time, lots of effort, and I get the drive to, you know, want to put a subscription fee on there to get your money back immediately. But sometimes it's better to make, you know, smaller, more targeted experiences and go, like, at the Dauntless route or the Warframe route, you know? Like, it's not like a massive MMO like World of Warcraft, but it has its online features, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Sky, we had a follow-up question for you. Just like you've explained what, hooked you to free MMO gaming typically for the most part. What makes you stop playing them?
The one thing you got to keep in mind is that I don't really play MMOs because they're MMOs. I don't really like playing with a lot of people in most circumstances. And so, like, RuneScape I loved because I got to craft. Neverwinter was about customization and being solo friendly. So there's not really any universal reason I stopped playing an MMO beyond what makes you stop playing any other game, which is waning interest and boredom. I don't want to play the same game forever. I want something new and different, and in most cases, believe experiences have logical endpoints. But what will often chase me from an MMO is having no one I know to play with, and then having to contend with strangers who can often just be boorish online, particularly to, let's put it this way, female presenting players.
Oh my god, yes. They just assume that you have no idea what you're doing.
One of my favorite RuneScape memories is sitting atop the castle wall in this capture the flag game they had called Castle Wars back in the day. And I don't know if they might have it today for all I know. And having this guy trying to break into our castle and he's mouthing off, like saying some really hideous, sexist, awful stuff up at me, right? And so what do? I sit there, I'm a mage, I wail like fireballs and shit down on him. And he couldn't get the door open, so I actually killed him. It was one of the only kills I ever got in Castle Wars. I was like 14, I knew nothing about video games back then.
Nice. Just like, mwah.
Yes. It was just this beautiful moment. But often you get chased out of things by people before you can even really learn how to become really competent at the experience, right? So, yeah, that's one of the disadvantages to MMOs, and what often chases me from them is simply just how awful people can be.
Yeah, I think I've been relatively lucky with Final Fantasy 14 in that most of the people I've encountered have been really, really friendly. Like they're just I don't know. It just seems to have like a really great community. But there are shitty people. For sure. Like God, I remember one tank who got mad that we had to redo a fight. So they decided they just weren't gonna play anymore. And we're just gonna die over and over again and like force me to resurrect them over and over and wouldn't pull aggro, so they just wouldn't do anything
Ugh.
because they were mad about how we were doing the fight. So I was like, okay, like you're instead of like just getting it over with, you're gonna like just sit there and prolong this painful experience for everyone around you. Great job.
Yeah, that's
And
a real dick move.
yeah, and it's like I find that that's kind of how people like lash out, and it's not very often that it happens. But like, oh god, like I've had people shout at me saying like, "Why did you pull?" I'm like, "I don't know. I was fucking standing here, and the monster came over and said hi, and you didn't do anything." Tank, who's supposed to be watching?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like most of the time, it's just people who are dissatisfied with the way you are playing the game, or like that you can't compensate for their every failing at playing their class. And oh god. So recently, I was playing with a group, and our DPS kept pulling like he pulled a few too many times because the tank was going relatively slowly. So the tank just stops, and he was waiting for the loot clock to wind down because you can't vote to dismiss a player while the loot clock is on. And that's like 5 minutes of real time.
Great.
Longer. And finally, the dude who he's been like saying, like, I asked him not to pull like multiple, like once very nicely, and now I'm gonna kick him out. And I was like, we're literally at the doorstep to the final boss. Just suck it up for another 10 fucking minutes and we'll be out of this. Instead, the dude he was like going to kick out of the party ran a vote to dismiss him instead, and I hit that yes button pretty fucking fast. I was like, nope.
You're done.
Yeah, I was just like, that is poetic justice. Our tank wanted to kick somebody out because they weren't playing the game the way they wanted to, and they were being giant whiners about it, and like just not particularly friendly, and just decided to hold up everyone so he could make a point, and got kicked out himself. So, Tank, if you recognize this story, you were wrong. You should have just sucked it up and moved on.
All right. So I think that gives everyone a good perspective on how we feel about MMOs, just from all of our points of view, from our experiences. So that's great. So yeah. So if you guys have any MMO related topics, or you guys want to talk to us MMOs, or what few that we may have discussed here, you can guys just hit us up online. You can find me on Twitter at Billionaires XP. You can check me out on Instagram at Ray Fegram. Check out our weekly streams, which typically are dauntless most of the time. So that's Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern. Definitely check those out. Sky, where can everyone find you?
I'm at SkyKnightXP on Twitter and Twitch, skyknight.xp on Instagram, and I stream on Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Awesome. And Irene, where can everyone find you?
You can find me at irogue_XP on Twitter and Twitch. You can find me playing Final Fantasy 14 on the... Jesus, I can't remember. Zalera! That's my server. I'm on Zalera. every now and then. Yeah, if people are actually interested in like hanging out, like I'll actually post my character name at some point. I usually stream on Thursdays. Right now it's God of War, so like come check it out. We're having lots of fun watching Kratos like try and not get mad.
Awesome. All right. And if you need it, don't forget to check out our transcript of the episode, courtesy of our XP Hobo, who you can also reach on Twitter at XP_Hobo. And that's at our website, xpbillionaires.wordpress.com. And we've still got our big news coming up for October with regards to a special stream that's coming out, which will be around the end of the month. Definitely check that out on our coffee page. That'll be at coffee.com/xpbillionaires. If you like what we're doing, please feel free to send us a coffee. And if not, just spread the word on what we're doing so that we can bring happiness to everyone else's lives. That would be awesome. All right, so that's going to be it for us this week. And remember, whether you're soloing or you're in a raid party, you win if you keep gaming. Take care now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Also be friendly.